If you like to go through some of the questions you may have in your minds with regard to the contents of the exam, okay, maybe just before the exam, we can reserve these 2 hours for this, okay?
Yeah, how many questions are there?
27. Actually 25, but 2 plus bonus questions from me, a gift from me to you. I was going to talk about gift exchange relations, etc. So this is a gift from me to you. Okay, 2 questions, all of the questions, 24 in total. Therefore, you can understand that they are going to make 108 points, all in all. Okay. And only those who give correct answer for all of the questions would not make any use of those bonuses. Okay. Okay, do you have other questions? I suppose that you are studying. This is what I hear from your other instructors. Please. Noetic and noematic. Actually, yeah, it was quite easy. There were several components in this, as the backbone of discussion. You know, first of all, consciousness was an act of intentionality. And being an act of intentionality, therefore, it cannot be, but always and always, a consciousness of something. Okay? So, on the one pole, we have that act of intentionality, you know. On the other pole, that which, towards which that intentionality directs itself, okay? It's called the object, you know, object for consciousness. What's important to understand here is this, okay? First of all, we no longer tend to think consciousness as if something standing here in the brain, but as an act directing itself towards something, okay? Therefore, it's already somehow, if you like, at the outside of this, okay? It's an act directing itself towards the externality. This is the first point. However, the second point is that it never reaches, therefore we see that Husserl stays loyal to the Kantian limitation. It never reaches what you may think the true object, but always to its own object. Okay? So the object for consciousness is something different from what we tend to understand as the real object. It's something, actually, it is that which shows itself in the structure of an experience. Okay? Essence? First noetics hikayesi. Okay. Now, noetics here is dealing nothing else, actually studying, you know, noetics, noematics, just like physics, mathematics, etc. Okay, the study of the modes of intentionalities, noetics. Okay. The other one, when you try to study, in other words, the other pole showing itself in the structure of consciousness, the object for consciousness, in other terms, okay, you are engaging in the study of noematics then, okay. Burada durmuyor ya. This time. Okay, so I hope that that answer will suffice for this, okay. And when you study the modalities of intentionality, seeing, hearing, remembering, knowing, hating, loving, etc., you are engaging in a study of noetics. Okay, so the modalities are here. When you are engaging in the study of the appearances of the object, okay, then you are studying noematics. That's that easy. Bu isme benzer bir çamaşır makinesi markası vardı galiba. Bir şey Matix. Orada hatırlayın. Now, as you can see, the roots of these two terms being the same. Actually, originally coming from the Greek term for thinking, nous, showing that both of them actually do take place in thinking, okay, nowhere else. Or if you like, here in this context, the act of intentionality. Now, what was the other question? Birisi bir şey soruyordu. Kim?
Hocam ben şey dedim ya, bu real object essence dediğimi dedim. Bu real object essence dediğimi dedim.
Anlayamadım.
Bu real object essence değil mi?
Real object?
Essence.
I don't know what do you mean by the real object.
Oraya yardımcı söyleyeyim.
No. The real object is not the essence. Okay? Essence is something belonging to that which shows itself in intentionality. Okay? So, yani essence, for instance, an apple shows itself, a house shows itself in my gaze, in my experiment. Okay? I'm not talking about the real house. I'm talking about the appearance of the house to me as a result of my intending to it. Okay? I'm not talking about the house. So the house appears to me. Okay? Now, the question here, as you know, there are many different modalities of intending, and in all these different modalities of intending, the house still appears to me. Okay? But there are certain characteristics of the house which makes the house, so to speak, okay? When you start to discern these characteristics of the house, okay, making the house, okay, then you arrive at the essence of the house. So the essence still belongs to the object for consciousness, okay? Now, phenomenology has nothing to say about the real object. For phenomenology, I mean the thing showing itself. You know, that was the famous slogan of the Husserlian phenomenology, back to things themselves. But by these things themselves, you should never understand things in themselves. Okay? Bu istifa etti. Remember, things in themselves are those things which thought to exist outside of the consciousness and functioning as the cause of the appearances the consciousness has. Okay? However, you know, in Kantian discussions, for instance, there has been many confusion about this concept of the things in themselves. However, at least in Kant's own writings, you would never find any claim with regard to the actual existence of things in themselves. Things in themselves, for him, what we think to exist external to the consciousness. And he reminds several times, that what we think may not necessarily be true. Simply because our thinking in this way is the result of the category of causation. Okay? So what else?
Hegel. Hegel'den sorabilir miyim?
Sor bakalım.
Ya master-slave ilişkisinden bahsettik ya.
Hı hı.
Ya şeyi anlayabiliyorum. Hani o iki ayrı pozisyondan hani bilinçlerin çarpışması bir şey. Ama orada master ve slave'e itaat edilen farklı pozisyonların özellikle işte slave'in karşısı, master'ın karşısı ulaşamayan. Neden? Nasıl?
Okay. Because master has much more time to develop, to cultivate culture. Because master does not need to work. All the services for him performed by the servant. Okay? And because the servant does not have much time to develop any culture. Okay? So that, therefore, this inability of, and not only time, you know, when you are master, you have been decorated, it means with many privileges at the same time. And when you are servant, this means that you have been deprived of these many privileges at the same time. Okay? So, the capacities of the slave devoting a larger part of his time to work for the master, allowing the master to have leisure to develop culture and consciousness. Okay? That's what Hegel argues, and that's what Nietzsche exactly reverses, remember. Okay? So there may be a question in relation to this problem in Hegel and in Nietzsche. And Nietzsche's approach, as you know, it is the slave for Nietzsche, not the master. Okay? It is the slave who develops consciousness, but the consciousness of another who himself does not have a consciousness, the master. The master, rather than developing a consciousness, therefore, interesting consequences coming out of it. Therefore, the slave or servant, actually, better term servant, developing a consciousness in its reaction to the master's power. Okay? However, in the case of the master, in Nietzsche's approach, we wouldn't see any development of consciousness, but we would see something else. Okay? You know, consciousness established a relationship of knowing. And knowing in that sense, it appears that Nietzsche was quite right. To engage in a relationship of knowing, one has to be at least capable, let me say this, if not always talk about it in negative terms, one has to be capable of reacting, okay? Reacting to an effect. But here, in the case of the master, master does not engage in the question of knowing the world, okay? He does not try to know the world, okay? On the contrary, what he does, he evaluates, okay? Or a better said term, valuates. You know? Values things, okay? It is not a matter of knowing, but for the problem for the master, or what he engages in, is not knowing but valuing the things. Okay, you know, that was why that discussion between the discussion on the relationship between what it was quantitative difference and the qualitative difference as the irreducible element in the quantitative difference was so important. Simply because it is this irreducible element that allows the master to evaluate things, okay? And establishing qualitative differences among the things. So the whole value system, according to Nietzsche, would be the value system of the master. Or if you like, you know, his book entitled Beyond Good and Evil. Why it was beyond good and evil? Simply because there he was about to discuss or claim that, okay, the good, there is no good apart from the doings of the master. Master does and names it as the good, okay, and the slave follows, okay, and therefore the problem of the slave is to know what things the master names as the good and the bad, okay. And it is through reacting these goods and bads of the master slave develops consciousness. But in Hegel, it's completely different, you know. For instance, both of the parties have their advantages and disadvantages. In the case of the master, according to Hegel, okay, while master acquires that necessary leisure to cultivate himself as a consciousness, as an accultured being, on the one hand. However, he severs his ties with real life, okay? He distances from real life, in other words, okay? Why? Simply because all the necessary functions of the real life were being performed by the slave, servant, okay? So it is the servant in Hegel who locates himself closer to life, not the master. Okay? So both of these sides have advantages and disadvantages. While master is dominating, establishing his domination over the servant, okay, therefore allowing, decorating his life with certain privileges and allowing himself a good amount of leisure to work on the development of consciousness, okay? The slave would not have no such opportunities, but in contrast would stay closer to life, which would have its own specific advantages, okay? Okay, any other? Yok mu? Her şey tamam mı? Sonra şuradan ışık geliyor da yok.
Hegel'in substance'ını çok şey yapamadım. Aslında substance demiyor da önceki substance, daha önce substance kullanımını alıp bu başka bir şeydir, böyledir falan tarzı bir şey diyor.
I don't specifically remember any significant problem of substance in Hegel. In what sense you are asking that question? In what context?
Makalede var. O zaman tamam, çok significant değilse. Ya bence de çok
Try to remind me.
Bunu hani muhabbetini bunun üstüne kurmaya çalışmıyordu ama bir noktada bahsediyordu da.
I don't remember right now. I had to take a look at. Okay. I'm sorry for this. If I don't remember, it means that. Okay, any other question? Bu kadar mı yani? Çıkalım mı? Yoksa structuralizm'e devam mı? Çok mu sevdiniz? Okay, please. Nerede? Biraz yüksekse ben ağır duyuyorum. Nerede? Husserl. Aha.
Şey falan, inozer örneği üzerinden bir şeydi ama onu da tam.
Yani I know, I remember that, but it's not necessary. It's not very important. Yani, yani it is not something important at the level of the concept. Let me put it in this way. To be able to explain away his approach to the analysis of the things. He mentions that, but it's not that critical. Okay. Okumuşsunuz bakıyorum. İyi, güzel. I'm happy to hear that. To see that.
Aslında belki bu da çok significant değil mi? Sormak istiyorum. Bu epohe ile ilgili asıl suspension'dan bahsediyoruz epohe derken. Bir şeyin suspend edilmesi söz konusu.
This is significant.
Evet, aslında belki ikinci kısmı çok alakalı olmayacak. Aslında biraz bahsetmiştiniz. Eğer suspension söz konusuysa suspend edilen bir şeyin olması gerekiyor.
Exactly.
O zaman consciousness sorunsuz, yani sorunsallaştırılabilecek bir şey. Ya eğer suspension'la şey yapıyorsak, objeleri the object of consciousness statüsüne ulaştırıyorsak, suspension'dan önceki halde bir consciousness var mıydı?
Yeah, exactly. But he described exactly. You are right. A very beautiful question. Exactly. You know, the first part, before even we start to, or the text starts to expose what Husserl really thinks about his phenomenology and so on. Actually, the text gives us a critique by Hegel of the natural attitude. Okay, it is the judgments developed within the framework of the natural attitude, actually, what has been suspended there, primarily. Simply because, yeah, this is common experience for all. Yeah, come on, man, apart from all those discussions, do we really think that what we see are not real? Ha? Şimdi yani, aramızda in between, speaking in between. Hani, let's do not let anybody hear what we say in between here in this classroom. So what has been said in this classroom, let's stay in the classroom. Yeah. Is there anybody among you really think that what they see are not the real world? Come on. Come on, man. Okay. Yani, this is completely a developed attitude, consciously developed attitude in thinking, okay? When we live our ordinary lives, we don't think that the grocer man over there that I met and exchanged money with is only a phenomenon or object of my own consciousness, etc., okay? I think that there is really a man there. I am communicating with him. There is really a grocery shop over there, a market here, a car, whatever. Okay? Yeah, in our natural attitude, we accept the world real as it is given. Okay? Actually, this is the point of departure for the Husserlian phenomenology as well. So without engaging in critique of this attitude, he would not probably present at least the important significance of his phenomenology. Okay? But phenomenology works quite well simply because lets you actually quite a common methodology, if you like, in social sciences as well, quite a popular one. Even though in the last decade, as far as I know, what was his name, starting with B? That French guy. Bourdieu. Okay, Bourdieu became much more popular. But Bourdieu's approach involves some degree, at least a tincture of phenomenology as well. Okay, it's not independent, completely separated from phenomenological approach. So, it turns out to be an important device, at least, in working out our problems in sociology as well. A lot of problems. So, actually what it should teach you is this. With your commonsensical, what Husserl calls natural attitude, you cannot make sociology, okay? Or any social sciences. You can perhaps make do in natural sciences, simply because there won't be any demand for this, okay? But in social sciences, or as the Germans call it, is in the sciences of the spirit, you wouldn't be able to make much, okay? Simply because in our world, if you like, the world of the spirit, okay, or the human world, things are not readily giving themselves, or things are at least not so much eager to give themselves to our understanding. Okay? Things needs to be constructed here. Okay?
I found the substance.
Okay, please read, do read. Ama yüksek sesli oku da duyabilirim.
Behavior terms, substance would be an unconditioned universal that is not experienced through the senses.
Unconditioned,
In Hegel terms, substance would be an unconditioned universal
universal.
that is not experienced through the senses. In other words, the unity. But I guess this substance not specifically as concept about.
Not so much specific. Yani I have my own doubts, but yani I can say that I didn't understand that phrase myself. So, yani I don't remember in my own reading about any significant worth to remember it appears right now when I intend to the idea. Okay? Any point worth to remember, I don't remember. Maybe some Hegel expert could explain it to us.
Hocam Nietzsche'deki şu will to power konseptinden bir bahsedebilir misiniz?
Will to power. It's a big concept deserving to be written in capital letters, in red. Now, you know, apart from the usual difficulties of this concept, usual difficulties interpreting the concept as a, say, political or social will to acquire power over the others, etc. Okay, this would be too much superficial interpretation. Okay, first let me, however, point other difficulties which may not be so much apparent. Okay, first of all, the term will. Bu muydu iflas eden? The term will. Now, when Nietzsche uses this term here in this connection, he was very well aware that this term actually means nothing. Okay? It's the product of the romantics of the 18th and 19th centuries, so to speak, and the utilitarian turned out to be a very important device in the hands of the utilitarians and so on and so forth. And originally, actually, referring had been invented to be able to engrave or insert freedom in the human. Okay, whatever that human is. Okay. So that the human, or if you like, the order at least, if not the agency, should have to have will. And this is a necessary concept, actually. It's not out of caprice it has been produced, simply because, you know, even from the ancient times on, there they do not talk about will, but voluntary and involuntary action, for instance, Aristotle talks. And determines the voluntary character of the action as a requirement for holding the doer of the deed responsible for that deed. Okay? And without such an attribution, we cannot make people responsible, liable to punishment or legal prosecution. Okay? So it is necessary. It is necessary to think that that individual does or commits that act out of his own or her own choice. Okay? Not out of necessity. This turns out to be even an important concept in the matters of religion and morality, simply because if you are doing some good out of necessity under the pressure of an enforcement, for instance, this would not mean that you are a good person. Okay? If you are helping a poor, for instance, just because you are not able to resist the pressure of the others, for instance, this means that you are not a good person, you are not a moral person, you are not a religious person even, okay? If you are believing in God under the pressure of the others, okay, you are not a religious person either, okay? Believing in God or doing good should be out of your own choice for them to have any value, okay? Therefore, we have that concept of will over here. And this will, from the very beginning, should necessarily, as the meaning of voluntary implies, okay, should necessarily supposed to be free, okay? However, when Nietzsche tackles with this concept, okay, he says that actually this concept is a worn out, old, and meaningless concept. But nevertheless, let's use it here. Okay? So here, in the earlier sense, before Nietzsche, if you like, okay, will came to mean a certain directionality of the actions of an agency determined out of the choice, free choice of that agency. Okay? Yani, a certain action is done out of my own choice. Okay, I do a certain action out of my own free choice, not being under the pressure of anybody else. For instance, in the discussions of slavery, ancient Greeks thought that slaves are not, most of the time at least, okay, are not capable of committing voluntary action. Okay? So why? Simply because they are operating under command. Okay? Command of the master. So when somebody operates under the command of somebody else, okay, there has been thought that that somebody does not have his will as the guide for his actions. Okay? However, Nietzsche uses this term just to express that complex and intricate relationship of the forces within the body or constituting a body. Okay? Actually, I remember he distinguished between the commanding and obeying forces, you know, and their being commanding, and emphasizes that their being commanding and obeying are not in relation to their being powerful or not, okay, simply because obeying and commanding are qualitative differences, originating from that critical element, that irreducible element in the quantitative difference. But quantitative, in other terms, if you simply, as the sciences do according to Nietzsche, simply measure up quantities of the forces engaging in a relation, therefore constituting a body, okay? Say one force is 2 quantity of the other force, okay? Now you may suggest that 2 should be the commanding here and the 1 should be the obeying there, okay? But this is not the case. This is the interpretation of the sciences, reducing that irreducible element in the difference of the forces, okay? Equating them, this 1 and these 2, equating these. You know, these 2 is nothing else than 1 plus 1. So equating these 3 ones with each other, actually. However, this one cannot be equated to this one and that one either, okay? It is this quantity, irreducible element in quantitative difference, which he calls quality. And this one can well be the commanding force, while these 2 can turn out to be the obeying force. Okay? Now, therefore, you can see that the obeying force may be more powerful. Okay? May be more powerful. So by obeying, he says, remember, the obeying forces do not give up their force, their character of being force. Okay? Their character of being force remains as such. Okay? So obeying as well was understood as power by Nietzsche. Okay? Just like commanding. So this relationship is a power relationship. Okay. Now, this body, under the command of the commanding forces, okay, directs itself to some relationality, some other relationality. This, as I guess, is proper to call as will to power. Okay. Holds itself together in existence and directs itself somewhere else. Okay. This is called will to power. Okay. Heidegger would call it actually holding sway for a while in being. Okay. It is this character of holding sway. By holding sway, by this, actually what do we mean is this, okay? The constitution of the body, and it is more or less always under the process of transformation, of course, but more or less continuation in its identifiable form, okay? Before disappearing once again, okay? So the constitution and disappearing takes time for the body. And in the meantime, the body holds itself together as the togetherness, tensions, problematic relation of the commanding and obeying forces. Okay? It is this, what's called primarily as will to power.
Is it the same? I think we said before that it's like staying the same, not transforming. You want to like stay at this moment or at your position, like trying to stop transformation.
Relatively, and understood in relative terms, I can say yes. But relatively, as we have seen, from then on, from Nietzsche on, and especially from structuralism on, it would not be possible to talk about any fixed position, no longer. All positions are relative, and all positions are gliding, so to speak, okay? Sliding to somewhere else. So no fixed position, more or less. Oh, yeah, and again, to use another Heideggerian phrase, yeah, approximately and for most of the time. Okay? Approximately, something becomes something approximately and for the most of the time, but never completely, never fully, never totally means. Okay. So will to power is approximately and for the most of time a body is being a body, continuing to be a body. Okay.
Hocam ama o body'nin disappear olduğu bir nokta var.
Yes, of course, of course.
O noktada neden becoming bitmiyor?
Because there are other bodies continuously proliferating and disappearing. Actually, yeah, this idea goes back to the Aristotelian discussion, both in physics, in metaphysics, as well as his tiny little, some 60 or 90 pages, according to the edition, piece of work called Genesis and Corruption, or sometimes translated as Coming to Be and Passing Away, okay, where he discusses the genesis, or if you like, coming to be of things out of non-being, non-existence, okay? Out of non-existence into existence, and then once again disappearing. As they come alone into being on the one hand, they already start to disappear on the other hand, okay? This is a process, but not only one thing. And now what's at stake, what we are talking about is no longer here, in the classical sense at least, what they call being, but rather becoming, okay? So in the process of becoming many bodies, if you like, a multiplicity, we are no longer talking about the same thing, okay? A multiplicity of the things coming into being and passing away. So therefore, Nietzsche describes this as the eternal return. What remains is not the bodies or coming again and again, repeating the same and same events and in same sequences. No, okay? What remains always the process of becoming, okay? That things are coming into being and passing away. Things are coming into being and passing away. Always and all the time, different bodies in Nietzschean terminology. Okay. One point I would like to make clear about you, with you. When Aristotle was talking about this, he introduced a strange concept. It's difficult to interpret, but at least in some limited, restricted contexts, it turns out to be possible to identify it as something very special. Okay? Actually, two concepts. One is matter. In Greek, hyle. He speaks of hyle. Okay? So, process of becoming or coming into being and passing away in his language, okay, actually brings into existence matter assuming many different forms. Now, there may be a very serious misunderstanding here. You may interpret this matter as the substratum of all of the process of becoming, or if not the process, all of the being. Okay, the substratum of being. Unformed, sometimes translated into English as unformed matter. Especially this expression, as you can see, can be quite misguiding simply because it implies that matter is there without acquiring any form, so therefore you cannot see it. As soon as it acquires a certain form, it comes before us as some certain specific thing. Okay? But this is not the case simply because in these works, actually, he describes what he understands by the term hyle, matter. He understands by the term hyle affecting and affected, or getting affected. Okay? It's nothing else than this. Okay? Therefore, we can talk about it as if it is the material substratum of existence and so on. But it is not. It is not some, or if you like, what more materiality do you demand? Okay? It is not, however, a given substance, okay, which we usually call matter, which we usually understand by the term matter. Okay? So matter is, according to him, is this simple process of affecting and getting affected. Okay? This point was important, and in connection to another point, I don't remember if I talked about this earlier, but that famous term, ousia, translated as substance. Remember that, for instance, when I tried to present you the Cartesian thinking, I told you that according to Descartes, there are two major substances. Not major, two substances, simply. Okay? There are two substances. And since his understanding of the substance was that a substance, according to him, is that whose existence is not dependent upon the existence of anything else. Okay? Which means that, practically speaking, that substance, what we call substance here, cannot enter into a relationship with something else which is not itself. Okay? Simply because all the modifications of the substance owes to the inner nature of the substance. Okay? Since it cannot be considered to be depending upon something else, its existence cannot be dependent upon the existence of something else. The changes taking place inside cannot be considered as depending upon the changes taking place in something else. Okay? So it encapsulates. So Aristotle, in connection with this matter here, when actually this unformed matter here translated, acquires a certain specific form. In Nietzschean language, acquires a body. Forms a body in the larger process of becoming, coming into being and passing away. It's called substance, ousia. Okay? But substance is rather a mistranslation, especially understood in Cartesian and Descartes Spinozistic senses. Okay? One has to be really careful about it, simply because ousia does not mean anything else than pointing out this. Okay? This particular, this. Not a concept, not something else, but this. Okay? Here and now, within the limitations of here and now, as it actualizes itself right now. As it actualizes itself, in other words, as it gets affected and affecting. Okay? So that was the point I'd like to make clear about with regard to our discussions of Aristotle. Any other questions? Okay, shall we have a break? Think about the questions.